It's something which I feel deeply passionate about. I think the rocks and the things that which they relate to have got some absolutely fascinating stories to tell. And I'm very interested in trying to get Northumberland and the borders really better represented, because the rocks here are absolutely fascinating. The industrial heritage which links to those rocks, the built environment which we have here, and the biodiversity, things like the Farne Islands, the Windsill grasslands, and the Ice Age heritage which we've got within the Cheviot Hills. They should be much better known, and that I think that we've got a story to tell here in the Carboniferous Coast, if you, as a name that comes off the top of my head. There's stories to tell here which are every bit as good as for example, the Jurassic Coast, but is nothing like as well known. Until November of last year, I was running a bed and breakfast in Berwick-on-Tweed. But alongside running the bed and breakfast, I've been doing the two things which I'm now running as my full-time business. So the one is some pottery. I'm going to be doing some ceramic work inspired by the Northumberland landscape. But also I've now started running the geology walks and geological events to do with Northumberland and the borders as a full-time thing. But alongside the bed and breakfast, I was running that as a part-time thing. And in particular, I've been doing quite a lot of work with the Northumberland coast, area of outstanding natural beauty. And I've been running something like 4 or 5 walks a year for them to try and promote understanding of geodiversity, the relationship between geology, the landscape, the biodiversity, the industrial heritage, the built environment, and other things. Yes, Berwick has got a long and fascinating past, mixed with and a long military history, because it is positioned on the border between England and Scotland. But it's been repointed with hard cement, and it's a complete disaster. Because the cement is so hard and it's waterproof. The idea of using the lime mortar is that it is also porous as well. So what happens if you use lime mortar with sandstone is that the lime mortar acts as a wick, and the water comes out through that, and the mortar actually spalls. But with this, with the hard cement in there, the water is forced into the sandstone, and the sandstone frosts and breaks down, and it utterly destroys the stone itself, and you end up with these revolting looking upstanding bits of hard stuff. It's a bit of a variant from the normal walk, which I do, in fact. That most of the walks I've done to date have been out on the coastline and talking specifically about the rocks and the stories they tell, whereas today has been more focused on the heritage of Berwick, to try and look and understand the influence that rocks have had on the town of Berwick and where it's grown. So it's a little bit different from some of the things which I've done in the past, but clearly quite closely related to it. Yes, absolutely. And one of the things that we talked about was that in the geological past, that some 400 million years or so ago, that what we saw was the joining together physically of England and Scotland as two large continental masses collided with each other to form the Scottish Highlands, and if you like, that is the starting point for the geological history that you see represented in the rocks underneath Berwick. The geology of Northumberland and the Borders is just absolutely iconic. Combination of the windsill, which is probably the most well-known geological feature you find in the area, which is a fascinating piece of geology in its own right. It's a magmatic rock that's been intruded underneath the ground and solidified there. But because of its hardness, it now forms upstanding areas like the lumps of rock which sit underneath Dunstanburgh and Bamburgh Castle, Lindisfarne and Hadrian's Wall. So yeah, it's a fantastic, if you like, representative rock of Northumberland. Yes, so what I'm hoping to do is that now that I've got the opportunity to run this as a full-time business, is to really expand on the number of things which I'm doing. So that's going to mean doing a lot more walks with the Northumberland coast area of outstanding natural beauty. And I'm also starting to work with the Northumberland National Park to develop walks within and around the Cheviot, which has also got some fascinating stories to tell. Alongside that, I'm also doing some work with some individuals and some groups. So, for example, I'm doing some work with the Howick Trust, and also hope to do some work with people like, for example, Andrew Douglas of the Serenity Boats and Sea Houses, and also with the rib trips that go out of Eyemouth, and some other groups to run geological related walks from boats, from bicycles, and to basically get the word out about geodiversity in a much wider way. I'm also hoping to use some of the funded projects which I'm involved in and hope to apply to do work with, to work more with some of the local schools as well. I think there's some very good work that could be done around getting some of the local geological and geologically related stories mapped into the local national curriculum, and I would love to be able to work with some of the local schools in order to do some of that work.